We were writing an open book quiz. I dropped my pencil and it bounced off the desk of a guy next to me. He noticed and picked it up. My teacher immediately failed both of us for cheating. The quiz was maybe 5% of our grade, and it was 20 years ago, but it still burns my grades. My high school physics teacher failed me on a test because my deskmate was copying from me. Like she saw I was copying from me. Knew I was the best in class. And because she was me. The reasoning was something among the lines of "let me," so I would have others take from me. Like I don't care. If I rob your house, you go to jail with me because I will protect your house better. Bank of America invested years ago, even though it eventually was sorted out. My blood pressure rises every time I think about it. Oh man. B of A bought my mortgage up for my last house and ultimately ended in foreclosure back in 2011. Flash forward to last year where I was working on buying another house, but the loan was turned down because B of A hadn't bothered to file the paperwork until 2016, making it look like my foreclosure was too recent. Burned them to the ground. When I was in kindergarten, my school had a student Olympics where all the kids would participate in physical competitions, like sprinting and jump ropes or other kid-friendly competitions. I was in the lead for the sprinting competition and it was the final lap. I was gonna win. I was so close, but one of my classmates ran behind me and shoved me down, making my knee bleed profusely. I don't care that I was injured. I'm just ducking pissed that that dipshit won. He didn't even get in trouble. I'm still pissed about that. Duck you, Michael. I was doing a relay race in kindergarten and was about to win, but I flipped and my foot goes over the finish line, but the teachers didn't count it, so I got last. That my parents sold my longboard that I bought and kept the money to themselves. I would have learned to use a skateboard if my cocaine using chair throwing wife eating thrift store Dwayne Johnson looking at stepdad didn't snap it in half on my birthday. When I was in second grade, I asked my teacher permission to go to the bathroom. She said yes. When I came back, I got in trouble for leaving the classroom without permission. I had a best friend, friends for 20 odd years, since we were 12. A few years ago, she did something that let my daughter down. I spoke to her and told her not to promise things to a child that you then won't deliver on. It was her time she had promised and my daughter was so excited to spend time with her. After that conversation, she cut me dead, deleted me from FB, out of her life. That was it. 20 years of going through everything together and it's still. I'm still mad at her. Still. My mum let my sister play Nintendogs on my DS. She wanted to buy a new dog. The problem was to do that she had to delete another dog and she deleted Bella, my best dog that I had trained for over a year. My sister was still at the time, but I am still mad about it. The same happened.
Roasted coffee right to your door. That's us, Trade. We send you coffee from the best independent roasters in America. Just take our quiz, tell us what you like, and we'll match you to coffees you'll love. Let us know how often you want it. Then it's time to prepare and ship for you. Direct from the roaster. Best part is, you'll bring your coffee. Preferences evolve. It's time to trade up for better trade. Get started at TradeTrade.com.
So if you're really looking for a good shoe, hiking shoes, sandal shoes, shoes that are really good, that are really made by amazing people, check out Zero Shoes.
And I actually forgot that I had them on because they are so cute. We believe in
Feeder is
modern shoes and sandals. Don't let your feet do what's needed.
Your feet are meant to bend, to move, to feel the ground. When you support the arch over time, it becomes weak. It's never too late to have strong and healthy feet.
With the help of the former lead designers from Nike, Reebok, and Crocs, we designed our Bare Foam and our Feel True Rubber, the strongest, lightest, most flexible footwear you'll find anywhere.
Absolutely perfect. Anything you want to do, but still want to look good.
The materials used are brilliant.
Ava, do you like your shoes? Yeah. Are they comfortable?
Zero shoes are terrific. I wear them pretty much every day. They're the best.
Extremely
Slip into our natural movement footwear, and you'll feel the freedom, feel the fun, and feel the world.
If you think of yourself as sometimes adventurous,
We'd love to have you join our adventure.
My little brother deleted some of my dogs, including the first one I got, which was also my favorite. 9 years ago, my now wife came to my place for the second time and dipped her spoon into my tiramisu after refusing her portion. How is she still your wife after this? We had a classroom pet lizard in the 3rd grade. I went to the pencil sharpener during class and noticed that it had been frightened and attached its tail. Something we learned about lizards when they brought it into the classroom. I loudly gasped when I saw it and received after-school detention for disrupting the class. I was an 8-year-old that was punished for seeing something scary to me. Still angry. When I was in elementary, we had a thing called school habits. The teachers will make sure that we went with the correct school uniform. White socks all the way up. Prayer time. My mom always sent me to school with everything correct. But my dumb switch teacher never put me a 10, so it was 6 or 7, which was really low. My mom went to talk about it and my teacher said, yeah, but after recess she has her socks down. Her hair all messy etc. Like, beach. I was in elementary. I will run all over the place, you a-hole. Later we found out it was BC. My mom was single mom. This teacher was super religious and didn't approve my mom having a child without getting married. That teacher is an a-hole. Well, you know what the Bible says. Everyone should judge other people and no one is equal to each other in God's eyes. The vets tried to take my brother's 16th time bird away, saying he needed a license and wasn't qualified to have bird. Our dad's friend found the bird a few weeks old and was dying. My brother nursed it back to health and would wake up at ridiculous hours and just look after it. Bird got sick, so my brother and mum took bird. Now called Ella to the vet. They took Ella. My brother started crying and tried running away with her cause he didn't want to leave her. He ended up running into a dead end and the bird was taken away. 3 days later, the vets called and said he could have the bird back as a bird expert or something. Said that the bird was just malnourished and told them to give it back to him as the bird was happy with him and not coping well without him, something along these lines. I heard about this, and within 5 ducking minutes of researching licenses regarding this bird, would you have duck-eyed guessed that you didn't need your license? So my brother was sad and clearly duck-eyed depressed because his baby was taken away and he was told he would never have her back. But would you look at that? I'm guessing the conversation went something like this. Bird expert, you guys are dogs. Give the kid his bird back. Vet, K. That my brother bullied, emotionally blackmailed my dad into spending over tens of 1,000s on his farm in a couple of years before my dad died. My brother knew he was inheriting the farm and went on and on about how he would struggle financially and how solar panels would help until dad to installed them and put in new heating and bought extra fields. Then the day before my dad died at home, I found him giving his wife's family a tour of the house and showing them what he was going to change. I hate him for it, but almost the last thing my dad said to me was, it's up to you to keep the family together. So I've never challenged him about his behavior or the lies he's told people since. Really upsets me 3 years later. Bunny, dad's gone. You don't have to like your brother anymore if you don't want to. My mom surrendered my dog while I was at school. The dog kept eating my shoes. This was 15 years ago. I have a great relationship with my mom now, but I'm still mad about that one. My mom said she gave me kitten to a lonely old lady. I was devastated because for a few years I started to think that she was my son and she didn't have the heart to tell me. I asked her and she seemed confused and then said, yes, the kitten died. Okay, I could have dealt with that rather than wondering where the duck my kitten was. A few years later I randomly mentioned the kitten getting knocked down and she's back saying she gave it to the old lady. Mom, what duck happened to Gizmo? I just want closure. The fact that my duck in children's elementary school did nothing to stop bullies. They would preach about not letting bullies control their actions, then turned a blind eye when kids would throw rocks at me. When I would ask a teacher to intervene in playground bullying, all they'd say is just try to stay away from them. What like? Thanks, Mrs. Duckface. Kinda hard to do when they're ducking, following me around to harass me. My holographic Sherazade. I was so excited when I got it and couldn't wait to show it off at school the next day. Then, about halfway through the day, it goes missing. I looked everywhere and I couldn't find it out. The very next day this kid Marcelo shows up with his own cherries and even though I couldn't prove it was mine, I knew it was. The timing was just too convenient that I lost mine and then he gets one. Ninja Turtle toy when I was younger. It changed from a regular turtle into Donatello, like a transformer type thing, and I brought it in for show and tell. By the end of the day it was lost. Next day, guess who brings Donatello to show and tell? Duck Human. A few years ago my husband and I were planning our wedding. Only his family wanted it rushed because I was pregnant. They ain't super religious. Mine didn't care, and they all got together and decided on a few dates. Those dates my mom was busy. Business trips mostly, but it was all stuff she couldn't back out of. I told them this. Asked to push off the wedding. Asked several times as nicely as I could manage. Several of my husband's family members basically said she was a shit for choosing these already planned plans over her own daughter's wedding. So I threatened to go on a business trip. A business trip to Hawaii. It lasted a week before and a week after. Was serious. Yet she's still mad at those family members calling her a shit mother. Years ago, when my mom died, we had a low-key problem. My mom wouldn't have wanted anything fancy. She legitimately told me to burn her instead of the life insurance money before she passed. Anyway, her older sister, who lived less than an hour away, couldn't be bothered to attend. Keep in mind that my impoverished mother had been both loaning them money and lending them her car. And not to mention my family had provided them the land to put their home on. She had no job. There was literally no reason for her not to be there. 2 years previous, I had taken 2 days off of work and drove 3 hours to be then when her husband died. Dead to me. When I was 7, I spent the night at my cousin's house. Before dinner, my uncle led the prayer. When he finished, my cousin blurred so he had his eyes open while you prayed. So my uncle railed on me about how it's disrespectful to have your eyes open while you pray. I said, how did he know my eyes were open and his eyes were closed? My uncle told me I couldn't have dessert. I never had my eyes open during the prayer. Beach. I took a math placement test in 7th grade and my score qualified me to 8th grade math and go straight to algebra. My teacher said she didn't think I could do it because my grades were not great. My grades sucked because I didn't do homework. I had high test scores. I told her I really wanted to take algebra, and she pulled out an algebra book, opened it up to random page, pointed at it and said, can you do this? Obviously I couldn't solve an algebra equation that I hadn't learned. And she says, see, you're not ready. Whoa, you made it to the end. You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.
Without wasting time, let's start. Let me just show you the operating system that I'm currently using. I'm using KDE, Edition, which is based on KDE and it's 5.2. Alright, now I'm just going to open my terminal and I'm going to show you UFetch. That's the stock UFetch. I haven't done any changes on it yet. And as you can see, that's the stock KDE Neon logo. In this video, I'm going to show you how to edit this logo and put a custom logo or put a custom ASCII logo of yourself. Alright, so let's start. Open your browser and just open this link. I mentioned it in the description. Now, open a file that you want, logo that you want. Open an image for that. I prefer this one, so I'm just going to save it. Save image here, so I'm going to it's a small image, go for 80. If it's a long image like the one I have taken, the length, then go for 70. If it's a small image, something like this, then maybe you can go for 80, 90, doesn't matter. But also make sure that the width increases as well, width and length. So just make sure of that. I prefer 70. Now see, the text color that we always want on terminal is white, so choose white, and the background that we want is black, so just select black, and that's it. Press enter and you'll find the result, or I'll just show you again. Once you choose the file, enter the details, background is black, just click on convert, and you're gonna see the ASCII has been generated. Just copy this, copy it from the start to the end, Control C or use copy, open your file manager, go to any folder that you want to use, and just create a file. Just create a text file, open it with your favorite text editor, and just paste it, paste the logo over here. Once you do that, you're gonna make sure that the spacing is correct. So let's say this is our logo. Just find the middle, which is closer to the the numbers. So I mean, don't choose this or don't choose this, because this is the furthest, but choose this. I'm sorry, I'm not so good in English, but alright, so just press shift and press the arrow key, and make sure to count the number of columns that you are removing here. Maybe 20. Yeah. Alright, you're gonna do that for all of it. Shift and then 1, 2, 3. Okay. One more. Alright, so I'm just gonna fast forward this from here. Alright guys, so now as you can see, the spacing is properly done. All you need to do is just need to copy this logo, copy, and just minimize this. You can minimize your browser window as well. Go to your root partition, scroll down, search NeoFetch, press enter, you're going to be shown a file. Right click and open with your favorite text editor. So I'm going to use KWrite because I'm used to it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down all the way to these logos, as you can see here. Now replace the logo that you don't use. So let's say I'm going to replace the logo of Cubes. Cubes OS it's not a good operating system anyway, so I'm just gonna copy the whole thing, and I'm gonna right click and click on paste. I'm so sorry what happened. Let me just remove that. Go back to the text file that we edited, click on copy. Go back over here and click on paste. Once you paste the logo, as you file, you'll have to enter your root password. So I did that. Minimize this file and open your file. Alternatively, you can even press Ctrl to hide and show hidden files. Go to this folder .config and you'll find a folder name in your fetch. Click on that. Open the configuration file. Just double click on the logo and scroll down all the way somewhere over here. Yeah. So scroll down over there and this part, line number 748. As you can see, it shows auto. I'm gonna replace it with Cubes OS. So what's the spelling? QUBES. It's case sensitive, guys, so make sure you type it properly. Cubes, Ctrl S, save the file, and once you open your terminal back and type neo fetch, it's gonna show you the logo that you made. Alright guys, so that's it. That's for the video now.
Things about my jackpot candle that just make sense. Inside every one of the candles is going to be a ring that's valued from $15,000 to $5,000. The candles are all natural.
May contain disturbing content. Viewer discretion advised. What conversation or interaction with a physically normal stranger left you wondering if you just talked to something non-human or supernatural, like an angel /demon/ghost/alien/time traveler, etc.? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment your own stories. I was working in
what time is practice over now? And I need to leave at what, 6:45? No, she's done at 6:45, so she's got to pull the car around and all that.
He was calm and polite, a very easygoing person. After speaking for a few minutes,
I'm live
he
streaming.
asked me if I liked magic. He
No,
then
I don't
proceeded
have
to
the
start
mic
talking about where I was from.
thing doing it.
He didn't ask a single question.
See?
He just began to talk.
I have the audio capture set to
He
me.
was within a 20-minute drive from the hospital I was born in. That
How does
hospital
throat feel
was an
today?
18-hour drive
Feels
from
good.
where that dealership was.
Are you ticklish right there too?
Yes, I'm too
But
close.
he didn't live there very long. He moved south to the city of
I'm
Liverpool.
fucking 16 now. I gotta stop being so
He
ticklish.
was absolutely spot on.
Just ask
He started rubbing his eyes
That's
and trying to
Is
push.
that right?
He asked me how long I had lived in Norway. Primarily back to the city I lived in for 8 years. At this point, I'm thinking he's some kind of weirdo who has done a background check on me. But how did you know where I had lived while overseas? He said, "Do you believe in magic now?" On the return down to the dealership, I was running every possible scenario through my head. My friend said to me, "How did you know the name of the city in Norway?" When we arrived, he immediately said, "I'm just having some fun with you." I was in the CIA for years as a linguist. Now that I'm retired, I just use it as a party trick. He had me so confused. He honestly could have said he was some kind of psychic, and I wouldn't have been able to argue. One evening in winter, I didn't leave work till almost 7 p.m. So I was walking home and thought, fuck it, I'll cut through the park to get home quicker, even though it's really poorly lit. A couple of minutes into the park, I could hear a group of people behind me and in front of me and was thinking, fuck, I'm going to be late. Up ahead, there was a lamppost with a CCTV camera on it, so I thought I'll stop there, and at least I'll get jumped on camera. As I stood beneath this light, this really tall woman jogged over and stopped next to me. I'm 6 feet tall, and she was way taller than me. She asked me, "Is it okay if I walk with you?" And I was like, "Sure, okay, I guess." She walked with me to the edge of the park, talking about dodging the park that night. As soon as we got to the edge of the park, she told me to have a good night, then jogged back into the park. It was a really weird experience. I felt certain I would have been mugged or something if she wasn't there. I walked through that park every day for about a year and never saw her again. This story is hard to explain, but I still get shivers when I think of it. He was a customer I was helping out. Honestly, there was nothing that really stood out with him. He was handsome, but in a normal way. He dressed normally. He talked normal. Was blandly friendly, as you are with strangers. Just a normal upper middle class type. The only thing that really stood out was his blue eyes. Not in a goofy superficial type way. He just had very, very blue eyes. But for some reason, he made me stand there. All I wanted to do was hide. I had never felt this way before or since. Even when I was followed home by someone, I never felt as sketchy or in danger as I did with this guy. After ringing it through, he reached out to shake my hand. This is not common at all here, but out of politeness, I took it and shook. And I instantly got so nauseous I almost gagged. The moment I got nauseous, he just held my hand and smiled, and something in that smile made me absolutely sure he knew what I was feeling, and he enjoyed it. I'm not religious in any way, but I remember thinking at that moment, oh fuck, is this the devil? After he left, I was still so sick feeling I had to go to the back and sit down. I'm not sure if he was a serial killer or not, but to this day, I have never experienced something even close to that encounter. I absolutely felt bone deep certainty that I was in some sort of danger. I felt like I felt the prey. It's a hard story to explain, because it's always a tough feeling, so I haven't told that many people about it. But to this day, it's one of the weirdest things I've experienced. As a child, I used to play outdoors with my childhood best friend. We would either knock on each other's doors and ask, can underscore come out to play? Or we would meet each other in our respective front yards and come outside. One day when I was about 10, I walked outside into my driveway because I thought I heard Kyle outside. I called out to her, and the little girl was my age came from around the back of the house instead. I learned her name was Amaya. She told me she was going to be there all day because she's waiting for her mom to pick her up. I asked her if Kyle was coming, but she said no. Kyle didn't technically live next door. His grandmother did, so it's not uncommon for him to not be able to block the days because he's at home. So,
I am currently
we spent the
terraforming
whole
my
day playing.
area.
I
That
can't remember
is
the
deadly
exact time,
if
but
I don't
know
have
it
on
was
my
from the
boots.
hottest point of the day to when the sun
Yes.
almost began to
So I'm
set.
covering it up so I can
It
take
was
off
the
my
middle of
boots.
summer.
It's
Whenever we
powdered
were
snow.
outside
If
playing,
you walk into it
we spent the
without
first half of
leather
our day
armor
inside
on,
of my garage
you take
playing because
freezing
it was
damage.
cool.
Oh, nice.
And as outside
Yeah.
began to
Alright.
get cooler, we
It's still
moved
kind
our
of early. I'm gonna
shenanigans
go
into my
lay down in
garden.
bed.
Alright.
After a couple of hours, she said that she had to go because her mom was coming soon. I hugged her, really sad that my new cool friend was leaving, but I figured she must be related to my neighbors in some way, so I'd be seeing her.
Yes.
The next day, Kyle's mom dropped him off at his grandmother's, so I came outside to play. I asked him when Amaya was coming back. Kyle said, "Who is Amaya?" I thought he was just being annoying, but by us going back and forth, I realized he really didn't know who Amaya was. I told him she had on a blue top and blue khakis yesterday, and her hair was in 3 large twists with pink bobos. Kyle insisted he didn't know who I was talking about. I asked his brother, who was 5 years his senior. He didn't know who I was referring to either. A little creeped out, I asked my parents, wasn't I playing with a girl yesterday? My mom and dad had no idea what girl I was talking to. They thought I was outside in the garage playing by myself. As a last resort, I asked Kyle's grandma. She told me there was no little girl there yesterday. She was home with her husband, and she doesn't know a little girl by that name. To this day, Kyle swears he doesn't know who I'm talking about. I don't know what to make of the situation. I know I played outside with that girl. We jumped rope, we blew bubbles, we played hand numbers. No one knows a little girl named Amaya, but I spent the day with her. Back in 1997, I was aged 8. I shared a room with my younger brother, who was 4 at the time. We used to have our grandparents over for dinner most nights. and it wasn't uncommon for them to stay long after we had gone to bed. They would come and kiss us goodbye in bed when they were going to leave. This one summer day, I woke up during the night and saw my granddad. It wasn't unusual, like I said. I said, "Hi, Granddad, are you leaving now?" He came and sat on my bed and said, "Yes, I'm saying goodbye for now." He kissed me and then went and sat on my brother's bed and said kissed him as well. Then he left. My childhood intuition picked up that he was a bit sad. The next morning, I went into the kitchen to find my mom crying. She told me that my granddad died last night of a sudden heart attack. I said, "How can that be?" "I saw him last night. He came and said good night to me." My mom said that my grandparents left shortly after I went to bed last night. I also remembered that my grandpa said goodbye and not good night. It was quite a shock, but at the same time a little comforting too. I don't remember a lot from my childhood, but this is a memory that I won't forget.
You know, I never thought installing an inverter system would be this easy.
It was awesome. We do.
I live in a small town, with very few black people around, Central Europe. I was pretty down because of a girl, and went for a kebab. While I was standing in the queue for kebab, in the pub right next to it, there was a woman that caught my attention, because of two things. Initially because of her face that's just uncommon to see there, another the fact that I for sure never seen her before, despite living in a small town my entire life and going around this pub every day. Another thing I noticed was that she didn't order anything, she just sat there by the table alone. Then I ordered my food, and while waiting for it, the woman leaned over the fence that separates kebab place from the pub, looked directly at me and offered me ice cream. I accepted the offer, and immediately after that, she looked me in the eyes, smiled a bit and clearly, calmly said, "I love you." Then as I received my kebab, I turned around where she was, and she was gone. Vanished as quickly as she appeared. I inspected the ice cream, and it seemed okay, and the package was intact. It was delicious. There was this kid I used to hang out with when I was around with Joe, and it still obsesses me. He wasn't from my school, and neither was he in the only other school in town. One day, he just showed up at the end of the school day and played with my friends and me, just like kids do. He was really nice, polite, clean, but he just seemed to have no family. He would never talk about his parents and avoided conversations about family. Nearby, but friends who lived with said that he didn't live with them. He was weird, but in a weird way. He was nice and fun, yet very mature for an 8-year kid. He had this emotional intelligence. He understood people, talked very well about his feelings, but barely showed his. He had this strange awareness. He would start really deep conversations that were not kids our age. He also was at an age when most of the kids have a voice that tells a dog to make them mute. One day, one of my friends lost his grandma, and he found oddly accurate words to reassure him. That scene is still in my head to this day. On the other hand, he knew no cultural stuff. Every film, cartoons, comics, TV show, he wouldn't know. We showed him stuff like WWE, Dragon Ball, and other manga/anime, and he became really a fan. The only times he would act childish was when he wanted to know more about his life. He would answer funny and barely comprehensive things like some kids do. Today I'm 100% sure he did that on purpose. I really looked up to him, although he was no leader or whatever. He was weird in a cool way, or cool in a weird way, at an age when a weird kid is just a weird kid no one wants to FW. He felt out of this world to me. My mother had a strange feeling about him, and years later I asked her about him, and she told me that she couldn't do anything because he was so nice and polite, but to her, he wasn't a child and seemed really weird. He just hung out with my friends and me for about a year. I have great memories with him, and I feel like he taught us much. One day he just stopped coming to play in our neighborhood, and no one saw him again. I have more anecdotes about him, and as time passes, more things feel wrong/weird to me. I have a deep feeling that I met someone too special or whatever. I'm not that much into supernatural stuff, yet I could start believing in a lot of things just because of this kid. This kind of deviates from the question, but I do think it's relevant. As a kid, my grandmother lived in a different country. She was super affectionate, but due to a severe back problem, she couldn't give me hugs, so the most physical touch we had was holding hands. She always had the most tender and warm hands, even on the coldest days or when the AC was on. We used to sit and talk for hours well into our teens. When I was 21, she suddenly passed away from a stroke. My last words to her before I saw her last were, "I love you very, very much," and that really comforted me at the time. In accordance with Jewish culture, we bury our dead, and since I am one of the only males in the family, I bore the brunt of digging most of the grave. I was exhausted and sad from the whole day, but I didn't get to express my emotions until the evening when I got home. I rushed to my room and let my emotions out, cold and drained from working so hard and especially being outside during winter. As I lay on my bed, my entire body cold, suddenly a weird feeling of warmth felt one of my hands. My hand became searing hot, almost like I had a fever, and I felt so eerily calm and placid. I knew she was there that night, holding my hand and saying goodbye. I haven't felt sad since, because I got to say my final goodbye. I had an encounter that was not quite non-human or supernatural, but definitely very off and maybe a cult member or a serial killer. I used to be a tailor in a suit shop in Edinburgh, and this very odd-looking gentleman came in. Short, big broad smile that was plastered on his face and weird little black round glasses that looked like they were Victorian or something. Anyway, he was dressed in an old worn tweed suit and wanted a new one for an event he was going to. He said it was his old fraternity or gentleman's club and gave a name. I wish I could remember it. It was over 10 years ago, but I feel like I forgot the name right away. I measured him up and gave him various suits to try on, selecting a whole outfit over the course of about 2 hours. The whole time he was asking me a bunch of very strange questions, and claimed he could see me. But I was an artist. He kept writing things down in this weird little journal he had. There was something just incredibly unsettling about it all. Eventually, once I had his outfit ready, he passed me a card and said that I should come along to his meetup. He could introduce me to his colleges and that they would have many business ventures for me. He laughed and said that the address was very bad to find, but even harder to leave. He then paid and left me a huge tip before leaving. When I was tidying up, I found one of his notebooks in the changing room. I snuck a look, and it was full of writing, but it was in some other language, and really, really scribbly. There were diagrams for buildings and lots of drawings of roads. He never came back to get the book, and I never went to the address till much later, and couldn't find it. I gave the book to a friend who thought he could decipher it, but nothing ever came of that. A few years later, I got involved with a charity that deals with people who have suffered terrible facial scars. One guy I got friendly with had been burned by his father when he came out of the closet. It was horrific stuff that I naively believed was in the distant past. Anyway, his father committed suicide in prison. Later I saw a photo of him, and holy crap, did he look just like my mysterious stranger. It was uncanny. Now it had to be a coincidence as the father had been dead for over a decade, but it added another very wired layer to the whole thing. I was a sophomore in college. I walked into my math class like any other day and sat in my usual spot, about 4 seats in on the 3rd row. Even though we didn't have a single seat, there was always a girl sitting 2 seats to the left, and a seat between us, and her male friend to the left. They seemed to just be good friends, always laughing, never any reason to give me concern. This day, in particular, I sat down, got my spiral and pencil out, and just quietly sat there looking forward and thinking about what I was going to do after class. Suddenly, I got this eerie feeling. I looked up to my left, and my heart practically stopped. The girl was staring straight at me, blank face, and her eyes were shining like a bright, piercing electric blue. Shining like lasers. Nothing at all natural. I can't explain accurately. I was basically paralyzed and couldn't move or say anything. I eventually blinked and looked forward, then looked back, and the girl's head was turned back to her friend as he was talking again. About 2 years later, I was with friends, and we were driving to a restaurant. Traffic was building up since it was rush hour, and we were stopped in the right lane. I'm in the back seat, and I happened to look up, diagonally to the left, and through the windshield. I looked into the car sitting in the lane next to us, its
back bumper is parallel to our front bumper, so we can see the driver easily. He turned almost completely around and looking back at me, staring intensely. Even from that distance, I could see his eyes were that piercing, bright, laser-like blue, and I froze again. Just like the last incident, I was eventually able to blink, look away, and then immediately look back. The man was turned forward, the light turned green, and we all started moving forward. It's been about 15 years, and I haven't experienced anything like that again, but it fucked with my mind for a while. I was walking in the woods by the sea of southern England, and I came across a rock formation that had a sign, the Wishing Seat. It was rather like a giant throne, although obviously natural, not man-made. I sat on it, and, entirely frivolously, made a wish. As I was sitting on it, a young family passed along the path in front of me, a man, woman, boy, and girl, all very ordinary in dress and appearance but strikingly beautiful. So the following year, I was walking along the path again, but in a different month and at a different time of day. I came across the Wishing Seat again and sat on it, and the same family passed by again. The world is full of coincidences, some significant, and some not, but this seemed a rather alone coincidence.
Nariva is the brain supplement trusted by a real neuroscientist. Me. Ask your phone. Nariva.
I swear 2 girls working at my local Starbucks are Nordic blondes. Insanely tall, with a blank stare, both speak to each other without actually speaking. If you make small talk, they have to think for an awkward amount of time to form their perfect response in a monotone voice. They are insanely tall, their skin is almost the color white, and their eyes are like ice. I told my wife about them, and if she had seen them, and she hadn't. A few weeks later, she comes in saying she talked to the strangest girl working at Starbucks, almost like she wasn't human. I described one of the girls, and my wife's face went straight to shock/validation. There is something off about those two. For miles. Not a good place. A little over 20 years ago, my friends and I went to a 4th of July party at the house of a guy they went to high school with. It started out pretty chill, but as the night went on, it ended up being the kind of party I didn't know really existed outside of an 80s teen movie. House in a rich neighborhood. No regard for property damage. Picture the party at the end of Weird Science, but subtract the bikers and kids in their teens and early 20s, most of whom were on LSD, and many of whom showed up with literal carloads of fireworks. At some point, these 2 guys showed up. Nobody knew who they were. They spoke to no one, not even each other. They didn't eat anything. They didn't drink anything. They didn't try to interact with anyone at all that I saw. What they did do was freak everyone straight the fuck out. Visually, they were exactly average. Average height, average looks, average build, ambiguous age, ambiguous ethnicity. 100% people. Except they absolutely radiated darkness and hostility. They would just stand on opposite sides of the room and glare angrily at each other for a while, then walk into a different room to glare angrily at each other again. They still communicate with each other like that. Creepy as hell. It was like there was some kind of evil force inside them that was barely contained by their skin. If you walked into a room where you were, it felt like the air itself suddenly became oppressive. At some point, my friends and I dipped out to go check out another party up in the mountains, and a couple of people we knew took off to a different party in a town in the opposite direction of where we were going, and about 30 miles away from the original party. About halfway to our destination, we stopped at a gas station to get smokes and drinks. When we walked out, those guys were there. They were standing outside of their car, perfectly still, just staring holes through us. I don't know if I've ever felt that creeped out. We all piled into our car in record time and peeled out of the parking lot. Thankfully, it didn't look like they tried to follow us, and we never saw them again. A few hours later, we went back to the first party to find a girl we knew sitting on the floor holding a baseball bat, junky as hell, ready to swing at anything that looked threatening. Apparently, those guys got way creepier after they left. Nobody would go so I never found out exactly what happened. miles away from where we were. Meanwhile, the people who stayed at the first party swear those guys didn't leave the party until hours after we saw them at the gas station. It was all intensely freaky. I don't know who those guys were or what they wanted, but I am I was out for a walk with my dog around the golden hour in the evening. It was a perfect evening. We were walking along a popular nature path, and this young man looked by. He was wearing sandals, very short, loose, sun-bleached shorts, was shirtless and had dreads that were so long they were down to the edge of his shorts. He was monochrome. His skin tone, shorts, dreads and sandals were all a light blonde beige. His hair was a perfect tone of sandy blonde. He had a really flat face and amber-colored eyes. He looked past us, effortlessly, and gave my dog a gentle stroke on the head as he passed and smiled warmly at me. It was a weirdly present moment, and my dog was going bonkers, desperately. Think about it a couple of times a day. It all felt like it happened in slow motion. I went to a meditation retreat where we would spend most of the day sitting and meditating. It was a big hall, and everyone had designed seats with about 1 square meter of area for themselves. The rows were aligned. Everyone was in line. There were about 200 people in this hall. You would hear the instructions and then close your eyes, and you were not supposed to make any noise until told you to open, like about an hour at a time. Of course, being my first time, I could never be still and meditate for that long. So I would open my eyes and look around and watch people. Sometimes there would be others also looking around too. On the third day bed, one or two rolled ahead and one to the right. She was moving very weirdly. She would have jolts of arm movements. She would shake uncontrollably. I just sat there and watched, a bit shocked and a bit confused. It got progressively worse as the days went on, and it was freaking me out. On the 6th day, I am sitting there trying to meditate and open my eyes to see her shaking and moving one arm above her head like one of those blow-up things we see at gas stations. And then it fell, while at the same time shaking her torso and head. I am watching it gobsmacked. Then she suddenly stops abruptly. Her head falls forward. And she starts to the Oh man, my heart never beat so fast. It was like a horror movie. Her face turned towards me in that weird position. Her hair was covering most of her face, and through it, I could see her eyes watching me. She did that for about 10 minutes, and the sound for us to stop speaking would be a sort of sign to raise the voice of the She turned forward, sat straight and got up and went ahead with the day as cheery as can be. That cut me off from meditating altogether. I am still scared of her and had nightmares about the into giving him a refund because, more than likely, he's in his own personal financial trouble. We worked hard on what is objectively a high-quality product. We delivered the product as promised. And if we took him to court to collect what he still owes us, we would win because he's the one who broke our contract. All the same, it's still frustrating and wildly disheartening when you put so much hard work in just to get here. People suck. I needed that quick rant today. LOL. The shittiest thing is when people rip you off like that when everyone wants you there. But don't really understand that taking somebody to court costs money. And you just got ripped off so you're in short supply of money so you can't afford to sue them. It's kind of a Trump strategy.
and sometimes the amount owed is enough for the loss to stick, but not enough to justify the expense nor the soul-sucking process of pursuing it legally. Source: I'm currently facing this myself. Nearing that time of the month where all my payments are due in one spectacular fashion to remind me how poor I am. Ah, yes, the old paycheck surfing bank account. Hang in there, dude. Call a few companies and ask to move your payment date. Most companies are amenable to having the bill due on a different day, as it makes it more likely you'll have the money to pay when it's due. I came straight out of the package. I just, you. OHA. Buddy, I'm so sorry. That's horrible. My teammate who was on a vacation for half the month winning the monthly award over me. Bro, he must be really good. She is. But her performance did nothing to justify her winning the award over me. I'm so mad. It's 2:15 a.m. and I can't sleep. That sucks. Most of those office awards are political. Equals it doesn't matter how much awesome stuff you do. It only matters if the right people know about you. My inability to figure out what I'll want with my life. No goals or motivation to see myself succeed. Dude, me too. You are so not alone in this. I had a pseudo-epiphany today about maybe going to a therapist and figuring out either how to be happy where I am or put together a new game plan. I can't see my forehead. Damn it. You can't see your ears either. But you can sure as duck see your nose. All of you are no longer ignoring that you can see your nose. Also, you are now breathing manually. I'm writing client proposals based on some work done out of another office and all the descriptions are generic as duck. Like update X, Y, and Z equipment. Update how, why, who asked for this? In some cases they've even to decipher this bullshit. I'd specific request. Use the format. Don't try and shoulder someone else's job for them. If progress gets delayed, you're making sure it's on them and not you. Sorry if it might not apply to your situation, but I hope it gives you an idea on how to handle it. I wish I could. No one involved works here anymore. The original proposals were open a year ago next week. Looks like a perfect opportunity for some malicious compliance. Updated X, Y, and Z. Added top-of-the-line LEDs and racing stripes. Reddit doesn't want to duck in work right now. It's been wonky a couple times over the last week. Not sure what's going on. My landlord. We had water damage and part of the remediation efforts required us moving 90% of our furniture downstairs and piled in the kitchen and bathrooms for a week. So I'm living downstairs in the den. My wife and kids are at the cabin. Because it was short notice I couldn't take the time off. And now apparently we can't move back in for another 7 days. 2 weeks instead of 1. Not because anything went wrong, but because the landlord either didn't ask or didn't communicate the timeline to us. So now I'm on day 5 of 14 without my family or a house. And she's telling me she can't possibly give us a break on rent because she had to pay her insurance deductible. Duck all of this. I will check the law where you live, but I know in many places a tenant can withhold rent over unlivable conditions. Since you can't live there right now, this definitely seems like a good time to withhold rent. Here you can't decide to withhold rent. You file a dispute with the tenancy branch first, which is a step I don't want to take just yet. The day may come and you actually have 2 years to file here, and we like the place, so we'll see how she is after this is over, and if she's not great then she's going to pay me back. People creating short-term fixes for problems while not realizing or outright disregarding the long-term effects of their decisions. Tale as old as time. A song as old as wine. That I have wasted years of my life with a friend who treated me like crap and ruined our entire relationship. I gave money to one of my friends and gave him food and match financial by his own accused me of calling his GF a slut. I proved myself innocent and he liked the whole school that I didn't call her that and that I tried to make her laugh. She done it. I also invited a friend who he considers close who bullies him and makes fun of him to his party instead of me. Jesus High School Christ. My granddad died less than an hour ago. No Go to bed. Unfortunately, I can't. My kids need me.